We're now in part 2 of a series of classes on fear, on trying to understand the root of our fears as they map out to the different sefirot. Why do we even care? But understanding where our fears might be rooted in, we actually might be able to understand a little bit better about how to fix our fears. That's really what it's all about. It's really all about the rectification or the different tikkunim that we should focus on, whether it's in emunah, or whether it's in bitachon, or whether it's in bitul. We talked about that. That's what we're calling the healing triad of emunah, faith, bitachon, trusting Hashem, and bitul, self-nullification, or getting rid of the ego. So these three major pathways really can be used with respect to all of our fears to help us to cope initially and eventually to get rid of them. It's obviously something that's going to require a tremendous amount of effort, but if we really want to do it, these are strategies that can help, and that's why it's important to know where it's rooted. So we understand the root, we can get to the source, and we can hopefully uproot it. So we're calling this the 10 root fears, right? And the one fear that rules them all. So we're now in part 2, and tonight we're going to focus on fears rooted in the middle sefirot of Chesed and Gevurah and Tiferet, which are typically translated as loving kindness, which is on the right side of the Eitz Chaim of the tree of life. Oftentimes you see that picture of the 10 sefirot in this kind of graphical representation. You can see that pretty well anywhere on the internet. So Chesed is on the right side, which corresponds to the right arm, the right hand, which corresponds to the midah of love, of loving kindness. And then on the on the left side, we have the midah called Gevurah, which is usually translated as might or strength. And this particular midah corresponds to things like judgment or self-restraint. And then we have the one in the middle, which is called Tiferet, which is really a harmonization or an integration of the two, of Chesed and of Gevurah. We want to keep in mind that without getting rid of our fears, we really can't trust Hashem. This is a bit of a perhaps a scary thing to think about, but it's really true, and it comes out of this pasuk in Tehillim chapter 56, verse 12, which says, "Be'Elohim batachti lo ira, ma yaseh adam li." I will trust in God, and I won't fear. See, that's the point. If we have fear, we can't really trust in Hashem. So bitachon, or trusting in Hashem, will be limited in our own life to the extent that we have fears. So wow, therefore we have a little bit of an impetus, hopefully a motivating factor in trying to get rid of these things. Because the ultimate end of it, which is what we talked about last time, is, after all, what can man do to you? And this is what Rabbi Nachman taught in Sichot Aran. I think it's in Nun, it's in Resh Nun 250 in Sichot Aran, where he talks about basically trusting in Hashem for your hishtadlut and not overworking. He says, what's the worst thing that could happen to you? You could starve to death. And that's kind of like this thing here, which basically says, if you trust in Hashem, what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, the worst thing that can happen is they're going to kill you or torture you or whatever, imprison you or shut you up or censure you. These kinds of things, like Avraham Avinu, he was thrown into the fire by Nimrod. Or Daniel's 3 friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they were also thrown into the fire. And Daniel himself was chucked into the big Gov Arayot, the den of lions. In other words, they didn't care about the outcome, and that's really the root, I think, of understanding what it means to have bitachon. If you find your own life and you think to yourself, wow, I really care about the outcome, I'm kind of hoping like a lot on one way, and it matters to me that things go a certain way, you still have your own will in the picture, and you haven't become complete in bitul. You haven't really given over your will totally to Hashem. So whenever you find yourself caring about the outcome, not really giving over the outcome to Hashem's control, it's a signal that, there's a lack of bitachon here, and it's probably rooted in some fear. Like, for example, I don't want to get thrown into the fire. Isn't that a valid fear? I don't want to get burned up. Let's now jump into the topic for tonight, which is now the fear is rooted in Chesed and in Gevurah and in Tiferet. First one, Chesed. Let's go through our notes one step at a time and just walk our way through it. Chesed is, once again, love. Loving kindness. What are the two basic fears rooted in Chesed? They're opposites. There's a positive and there's a negative. The most common one is fear of rejection. Fear of rejection basically says something like this in our own heads. It says, so-and-so doesn't want me. They don't love me. I'm not welcome here. When you begin to hear yourself say those words, you should understand what's happening inside. What's happening is there's a fear of rejection, and rejection is the lack of love. So that is definitely rooted in the sphere of Chesed. when we know that we are fearing that, it's telling us that our midah of chesed is not complete. It hasn't been made whole yet. There's a distortion or a lack in the light of chesed in our lives. What we can do, obviously, is we could pray to Hashem, and we could say, Hashem, pour out your chesed into my life. Let me see the light of chesed, and let me express it in my own midot, in my own character traits. That's the sort of negative side. The positive side, like, what's the positive side? I mean, isn't chesed good? Isn't love good? Yes, but too much can be stifling. Can be stifling. So that's the fear of over acceptance, of being smothered in love. Sometimes children can have this kind of fear if their mothers are like over possessive, right? And they just feel like, just get away, give me some space, let me breathe. Stop always being around me. That kind of thing. That's a fear of over acceptance, and it's quote valid. Like, all the fears are valid and yet also invalid. They're valid in the sense that we can understand them and they make sense to us, but they're invalid in the sense that, well, they're just not perfect. We're not perfect beings yet, and they're rooted in a fundamental fear of being separated from Hashem, and that's not right. That's rooted in sin. So it's valid and it's invalid both at the same time. And so if you fear this overwhelming amount of love that you feel could be smothering, then that's an indication that you might feel that you're going to lose yourself. You're going to lose your own identity. Who am I anymore? I'm just like smothered under a blanket of love, and I want to express myself and I can't. So the inner mind might say something like this: if everyone draws close, I'm going to drown in their needs. I'm going to drown in somebody else's needs. Their love will smother me and I'm going to lose myself. So we hear ourselves saying those things. It's a signal that we might be fearing being overloved, which is completely understandable depending on who we're surrounded by. Now, a lot of fears, by the way, as a side point, a lot of fears that we end up with as adults are rooted in things that happened to us either when we were very young, and most of us don't have a good memory of those things, which is kind of, too bad in a sense, because then we have fears we don't know where they came from. We don't know, like, why do I fear? And then fill in the blank. Where does it come from? Most of us don't know, because it goes back to things that happened to us when we were too young to understand or to process them properly, or even have a chance of processing it properly as maybe an adult might be able to do. That's one source of fears that we end up with as adults that we don't know where they come from. Another source is, in fact, they could be coming from previous gilgulim, previous reincarnations, in which case we would have no memory of it whatsoever, not even a hope of memory, unless you undergo some type of therapy, which certain people are able to do, to help you to sort of go back into previous gilgulim of your own soul, and then help identify what events might have taken place that could have triggered a fear that you have now in life. And so why do you have it? You have it because now it's time to fix it. Now it's time to heal it. Because in a previous life, something happened, something traumatic happened, it never got fixed. Now you're the same soul, so it didn't go anywhere. Where'd it go? It didn't disappear. It doesn't magically go poof and all of a sudden the fear is gone. It's embedded in your soul. So when you come back again, it's still there, so it has to be fixed. So you have to do tikkunim. So we now today, you might call this hopefully the end of this present age, or close to the end of this present age. Even if it's decades away, it's still close to the end, considering that things have been going on for almost 6,000 years. No matter how you slice it, it's close to the end. We're people that are literally bags filled with fears. And the more you begin to, if you spend time thinking about these fears in your own life, which I've tried to do in preparing these classes for the past couple of weeks, is it can get kind of overwhelming, because you can realize, wow, I literally am filled with fears from the top of my head to the bottom of my foot, which really is the entire array of 10 sefirot, from the top of my head, from Keter, all the way down to the bottom of my foot, either if you want to call it, Yesod, or Malchut, or Netzach and Hod. Literally, our entire structure of our sefirot in our soul is just riddled with fear. And almost any time that something happens that triggers a negative response in us, whether it could be anger, whether it could be frustration, whatever it is, if you just stop for a second, if you can do that, and that requires da'at, but if you can do it, say, wait a minute, why am I reacting like this now? What's going on? It's because there's a fear rooted in it. There's a fear embedded in that. And what's happening around you is simply awakening that fear. And that's why you're getting angry, or that's why you're getting agitated, because there's this fear that became alive in you all of a sudden, and you don't like it. So we have to get a grip on these things without getting overwhelmed. I think and there's a balance there. So you can only accept this as you're able to. I understand that. Some things are just too overwhelming, and that's understandable. So we want to go step by step in our own personal life, accepting what we can, doing what we can to try to heal ourselves. Because really, ultimate healing is, in a sense, self-healing. You might say, yes, Hashem heals. I'm not saying that's not true. Ultimate healing is from Hashem. But it has to be directed from the self. You have to want to heal yourself. You have to put effort into it. Like you have to do, quote, your hishtadlut on the healing of your soul. All right, so that's basically the double, the heads and tail side of the fears relating to Chesed. And what is the tikkun? What is the ultimate rectification of those fears, or of the ultimate fear in Chesed? The actual tikkun is you have to become rooted in divine love, rooted in Hashem's love. Because why? Because Hashem's Chesed, it never withdraws, and it doesn't smother either. So when we focus on Hashem's love and Hashem's kindness and His Chesed, we realize two things. One, Hashem himself, he doesn't reject us. And number two, he doesn't smother us. So all those fears are related to, in a sense, the people around us. That's why we call these interpersonal fears. So instead we want to focus on Hashem's love and Hashem's kindness. And that will help me a lot. That will help me a lot to overcome these baggages of fear that I have with me. And in other words, we have to realize that my worth, my own personal worth, is not at the mercy of other people. It's not at the mercy of whether I'm rejected or whether I'm embraced by others. So we can now go to our healing triad. The healing triad, remember, is made up of three components: emunah, bitachon, and bitul. So let's go through how these might play out. Emunah would say, I believe in Hashem. I believe in Hashem. And I believe in His constant love for me. That it is never withdrawn from me. So I never have to fear being rejected by Hashem. I may be rejected by man, but that's just a test that Hashem is giving me. He wants me to see through that, to realize that from Hashem's point of view, it's not a rejection. Not at all. Not from Hashem's point of view. Hashem's constant chesed, His constant loving kindness, that's what holds me up and keeps me firm, i.e. emunah, steadfast, even when, it's not there with people. And that's okay. And then we don't have to hold grudges, because we realize that other people, there's a tool in Hashem's hand, and it's all done for my good anyway. So we don't want to get mad at people because they might make me feel that way. Because these things may take years to overcome, I understand. What about the bitachon aspect? It means going forward, even though there's adversity all around me. So how might bitachon play out? Well, bitachon means trust, yeah? So I'm going to trust Hashem enough to continue to act out of my own love for others. I'm not going to limit my reaction to other people because of the way they may or may not properly exhibit chesed toward me. What should that have to do with how I express my own midah, my own attribute of chesed? So I'm going to continue to give. I'm going to continue to reach out. I'm going to continue to connect with people to the extent that I can. Obviously, you have to be careful because you don't want to make things worse. Even if I risk, number one, rejection, or two, being smothered. I'm just going to keep on going, keep on doing, keep on acting. That's bitachon. And then the third component, which is bitul, or self-nullification, getting rid of your ego. What is that? Another way to understand bitul is surrender. You give up your demands. You give up your own will. So here we say in your notes, it says, I surrender both my craving for approval, and that's a tough one in our generation. It is. We have to give up that craving for approval. And on the other hand, my fear of being smothered, just give it up. Give it up. Give it over to Hashem. Let Hashem's love flow through me, and therefore free me to love without kind of conditions that I might put on myself. Now, these are easy words to say. These are not necessarily easy to actually express in our life. These are hardcore midot rectifications, tikkunim, that literally can take months, years, and a lifetime to achieve if we work at it. Rabbi Nachman said a number of places that somebody who really wants to overcome a bad midah, he goes to Hashem an hour every day and heat bodedut, and he keeps working on that bad midah over and over again, every single day, day after day after day, till he rectifies it. And then he goes to the next one, the next bad character trait, and he does the same thing. And he just keeps on going. And that's how he functions in life. So we do have recourse. It's called hishtadlut, and it's called heat bodedut. Put those two things together. You have to put forth effort. What is the effort? Go to the field. And Elul is a perfect month for that, right? Chazal teaches the king is in the field. What does that mean when Chazal say during the month of Elul the king is in the field? This is what it means. It means now is the perfect time to go out into the field and do heat bodedut, because that's where the king is to be found. It's perfect time for doing tshuva and trying to rectify and fix all these problems in our lives. What pasuk might be able to help you if you recognize that you're suffering from these fears? Here we've got Isaiah, Yeshayahu chapter 54 verse 10. For the mountains may depart and the hills may be removed. But Hashem says, listen to what he says, my chesed, my loving kindness shall not depart from you, nor shall my covenant of peace be removed, says Hashem who has mercy on you. That's a promise. And you go to the bank with that promise. You say, Hashem, I'm suffering. I'm fearing this. I'm fearing that. Can't handle these fears. They're driving me crazy. I don't want to be encumbered by these fears. So we focus, Hashem, I'm going to focus on the fact that your love, your chesed is with me all the time. It's never withdrawn and it's never going to smother me. And we focus on that. And we use the word of Hashem to help that. And then if you want like a breathing exercise in such times, you want to slow down, turn off your TVs and your phones and your media and whatever, and just breathe in and out slowly and say, I'm already loved perfectly. And Hashem's love is my root. I'm rooted in Hashem's love. What do I have to be afraid for? When I know that Hashem loves me, and you say, I'm rooted in Hashem's love. I'm rooted in Hashem's love. I'm rooted in Hashem's love. You're not rooted, and then you begin to think of those words. What do those words mean? They mean I'm not rooted in the love coming from somebody else. My root is not in the love or the lack of it from my mother or my father or my spouse or my children. My root is in Hashem's love. And that's perfect and never flawed. And so we get to the root, we get to the source, and it helps a lot. It really does, can help a lot. All right, so that's the fears, how they play out in Chesed. Let's go on now to number 2. What do the fears rooted in Gevurah look like? Again, what is Gevurah? Gevurah is strength, but it's really understood to be discipline, self-discipline, also harshness, judgment. So, it's really opposite from Chesed, right? Because Chesed is all about outgoing, and Gevurah is all about restraint. So Yitzhak, he was all about Gevurah. What did that mean? That meant that he basically, he gave himself over. He restricted himself so much that he was willing to accept upon himself death from his father, Abraham, right? That's pretty serious stuff. So Gevurah is a great character trait. It's not bad. But when we point Gevurah at other people and our strictness with ourselves turns around and becomes strictness on others, then we sow all kinds of problems. Typically in the family. It's where it almost always starts. So we have to be careful. So let's take a look now at the Gevurah and the fears rooted in the Gevurah. On the negative side, what do we fear? We fear failure. A lot of people fear failure. The fear of failure means what? It means that I'm being judged. It means that I'm being judged as inadequate, as not perfect. And the judgment that I'm receiving is a type of punishment. That's how I perceive it. So our minds inside of our head might say something like this. I will be judged inadequate. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. And I'll be punished for it. And that's fear. Fear of punishment. That's fear. That's a fear rooted in Gevurah. So fear of failure, fear of punishment, all that sort of stuff is rooted in Gevurah. A lot of children end up having this if they have very harsh fathers, for example. On the flip side, it's just the opposite. Somebody could not fear failure. They fear success. How could it be that somebody isn't success? Yeah, some people fear success. Fearing success means really, we know this, it's called perfectionism. Perfectionism. Everything has to be absolutely perfect, flawless. Why? Now we're beginning to see what might be the driver behind certain kinds of perfectionism. The driver behind it is I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be found to be inadequate. So instead, I became enslaved to trying to do everything perfect. So in fact, somebody can actually hold both fears at the exact same time. He can hold the positive and the negative, or the minus and the plus fear simultaneously. And then it becomes very difficult to untangle. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not here to diagnose anybody. Mostly these are for self-reflection purposes and to illustrate the spiritual point that when we understand the sefirot, we can understand, it's a great map to understanding our own souls, our own selves. If we feel like we are being crushed by standards, crushed by achievements, you always have to win. You always have to get 100 on the test. You know, and your parents, you're a failure if you got a 9 now. How could you have gotten something wrong? What's the matter with you? That kind of thing. You know, and there are parents that do that to children. So then we should realize, as a result of those things, my sphere of Gevurah has become distorted. And it's sick and it needs to be fixed. Okay, so the fear of success is the other one, which, again, going back to it, says what? If I succeed, then either me or others will just keep expecting more and more and more. And then I become trapped by these standards. Whether they're my own standards that I've now accepted upon myself, or they're others that other people have. There's nothing wrong with standards. Don't misunderstand. There's nothing wrong with standards. The point is when we feel trapped by those standards, when we feel crushed by those standards, that's the problem. When the standards become controlling us, instead of us, in a sense, controlling our own lives. All right, so what is the tikkun? The tikkun may sound a little flimsy here, and it kind of goes against a lot of the sort of, self-help stuff in our world today. But I'll say it anyway because it's true. Effort really does matter. Now, a lot of people say, that are very competitive people, say effort doesn't matter, only winning matters. Well, that's rooted in a problem here in Gevurah and a problem in Netzach, which we'll get to in next class. But it really does matter. It's not an excuse. You don't walk around and tell all your kids in class, it doesn't matter, just effort, that's all you need. But sometimes the kid, he needs to hear effort's what matters. So one must be very careful about this because it is a truth, but it can be overplayed. Judgment belongs to Hashem, not to people's harsh standards. That's the thing. And sometimes people's harsh standards are justified when they say, well, this is Hashem's standards. And then it makes it doubly difficult because now what we've done is we've indoctrinated the poor victim into thinking that not only am I getting harshness from an authority figure, I'm also being told that's the way Hashem is. And now I end up with a distorted perspective of Hashem when I should be thinking that Hashem loves me. Now I'm thinking that Hashem is a mean, old man, that he's just ready to get us at every chance that he gets. So what should we be thinking about? We need to anchor ourselves in humility. And that is, if I fall short, no big deal. Just move on in life. Don't beat ourselves up. We've said this a number of times before as well. And also, flip side, don't become a slave to success. It doesn't matter. It's only an imagination anyway. What is success? What is failure, really? You know what success is? It's not falling down. Success is getting up after you fell down. That's success. If you fall down 100 times and get up 100 times, you're incredibly successful. You're probably one of the most successful people in the entire world. But if you fall down once and never get up, now you're not so successful. Okay? So it is far better to strive to achieve something and fail and get up and try again than never to have tried at all because of fear. Now we turn to the healing triad. We'll go with emunah. What does it look like here? Again, emunah is belief. It's believing that everything around me is orchestrated by Hashem for my good. So how does it play out? I believe that Hashem sees effort with compassion. He's not there to beat me up about stuff. Not just the outcome, right? Outcome. Don't be outcome focused. Don't be outcome focused. Yes, strive for the outcome. Set the goal. But don't go crazy if you don't make it. Because really, if you think about it, bitachon itself is not focusing on the outcome. It's letting the outcome be in Hashem's hands. Hashem may actually prevent you from achieving something that you actually, quote, should have been able to achieve in normal way of looking at things. And Hashem put up the block. He put up the obstacle. Well, it may not have been you at all. So there are you. You see? So you have to realize that the outcome is not primary. What does matter is I'm working and I'm going forward and I believe in Hashem that it's orchestrated for my good. As far as Hashem is concerned, I already have worth. And my worth in Hashem's eyes is not dependent upon whether I have an outcome that's I think is good or I have an outcome that I think is bad. Hashem doesn't determine your worth like that. Hashem created you from the very beginning of your existence as tremendously worthy. You know, you might think about it like this, that Hashem literally needs you in the world. Otherwise, he wouldn't have created you. I say needs. Hashem doesn't have needs, but in a sense, from our point of view, there'd be no point in him creating you unless he needed you to be in the world right now. So that's tremendous worth. Bitachon says, I trust him enough to keep acting despite the risk of failing. I'm not going to freeze up and not keep trying. I'm going to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. So try, step out, go forward, and ask Hashem to bless the outcome. That's all. The outcome is in Hashem's hand, not in our hands. And number 3, the third aspect, which is bitul, says, I bow the ego of achievement, because that's what it is. It's an ego of achievement. And I release both the terror of inadequacy as well as the tyranny of perfection. Because they're both, it's a double-edged sword that can really trap us a lot and create a lot of misery in our lives. And say success and failure, that's in Hashem's hands. If I put forth my effort and I go forward and I try all that I can, then the outcome is not in my hands. It's in Hashem's hands. He determines whether I, quote, succeed or fail. And even then, they're only imaginary anyway because they're just illusions. Like I said, the real success is no matter what happens, I keep going. That's the true success. All right, so what's the pasuk? Pasuk here is in Tehillim chapter 37, verses 23 and 24, which says that though he may fall, actually it's in verse 24, ki yipol, though a person may fall, he shall not be cast down. Hashem holds his hand up. You see, even though you fall, you really haven't fallen at all. You've only fallen from your point of view. From Hashem's point of view, you haven't fallen because he hasn't thrown you down. He wants you to get up and keep going. He's holding your hand. He's holding your hand. You want your hand held. Children want their hands held, by their daddy, by their mommy. When we get old, we say, don't hold my hand anymore. But really, we always want Hashem to hold our hand, just like a child wants his parents to hold his hand. We may not say it because we're too proud to say it. I'll say it. I'm not too proud to say it. I want Hashem to hold my hand. I want him to guide me and lead me in life. That's what I would like to be able to do. And the breath, the breathing exercise, the sort of mantra you can work on is, I bring the effort, he brings the fruit. He meaning Hashem. I bring my effort. That's it. I bring the effort. Hashem brings the fruit. Same thing in the business world, right? You put forth the effort. Hashem determines whether it's going to bear fruit or not. Like say, like you write a book. We said this before. You write a book and 10 people buy it. Somebody else writes a book and 1 million people buy it. Both great books. What determines one versus the other? Marketing, strategy, all that jazz? Not really. That's not really the point. Hashem can do anything he wants. Hashem is the one who brings the fruit. Now, let's turn to number 3, which is the fears rooted in Tiferet. What is, again, Tiferet? What is it? It means beauty, harmony, splendor, truth. Okay, so now we're in a whole different world now because we don't just have Chesed by itself or Gevurah by itself. We really have the two of them blending together. So Tiferet is a blend where everything comes together in a beautiful way. So what are the possible main fears that come out of Tiferet when it's distorted and imperfect and flawed? Well, on the negative side is a fear of shame. Now, shame is a complicated fear, and in fact, later on, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll learn that that shame also has an aspect in Hod. So maybe we'll get to that next class. But because there's different kinds of shame. Here, shame is understood as being seen as false. Remember, truth is the essence of Tiferet. So the fear is that I won't be seen as being true. I won't be seen as being beautiful, and that will bring shame. So it's a shame of a lack of beauty. It's a shame of a lack of truth. It's a shame of being viewed as being false. It's not a shame of falling down on a banana peel. That's a different kind of shame. That's a shame that would be in Hod. Okay, but this is, I'm trying to understand a little bit before we get there so that when we do get there, you won't get too confused. That's the negative side when a fear is rooted in Tiferet. On the positive side, again, what's wrong with truth? What's wrong with beauty? Why would anybody fear truth or fear beauty? The easiest way I think I can understand this is it's the pedestal syndrome. Somebody, it could be you, it could be other people, they put you up on a pedestal, and now you're up there in the eyes of everybody, and everything must be perfect. Once again, impossible expectations. People are expecting the impossible. And you can't live up to other people's expectations. We can't go through life always trying to live up to other people's expectations, right? We want to live up to Hashem's expectations, not other people. Their expectations are not important. But again, most of us became trapped in this fear when we were children, when we didn't know any difference and we didn't know how to deal with it properly. And then it became embedded in our soul. Okay, so the voices in our head might go like this. The shame, which is the sort of lack of dignity side, will be, they'll see through me. I'll be exposed as false. And my face will burn in shame, right? That's what it'll say. If you feel like people are going to see through you and you're concerned that you don't want people to see the real you, that's what it is. That's where it is. It's in Tiferet. And then on the other side is you're up on a pedestal. It's too much light. It's too much light. Over radiance. If they see my beauty and they see my truth too clearly, I'll never live up to it. Because they're always going to want more truth and more beauty. And then what happens? I'll just disappoint people because I'm bound to fall off the pedestal at some point. So these are problems. These are problems. What is the tikkun? What do we need to have in our mind? 1, be committed to truth. Yes, we need to be committed to truth. 2, shame dissolves when I stand transparent. When I'm willing to be honest with people and exposed, and I don't have to fear, right? Fear, transparency, this is a very good thing. Many people, they are afraid, deeply existentially afraid of opening up, of being transparent. Why? This is why. Because they don't want people to see them, who they really are. They're afraid of being exposed. This is a problem, a flaw in Tiferet. So it goes like this. This is me. This is who I am. Imperfect, as I am. But I'm honest. That's the balance. I'm imperfect, so don't put me up on a pedestal. But I really strive for truth. And I strive for honesty. All right, so then the emunah angle, now we go to the healing. The emunah angle would say, I believe that Hashem's truth runs deeper than appearances. And then Hashem looks at the heart. Not at the outward appearance. This is all the case about Hashem telling Shmuel, right, about David HaMelech. Don't look at the outside. Hashem sees the heart. He sees the heart of David HaMelech. He's the one, anoint him. David is the one to be anointed. You Shmuel, you see all these outward things, and you want to think, oh, it's the big, it's the big firstborn, and he's strong, and he's courageous, and he looks beautiful. No. Let's get this runt of the family, David, because I see the heart. Focus on that, and it'll help you a lot. The bitachon angle says, I trust Hashem to show up vulnerable. Now, I've had people tell me, wow, you're so brave that you're willing to, put your face on YouTube or whatever, and because you're exposing yourself. You're willing to be vulnerable. Yeah, well, so why? Well, I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, obviously, to other people it is, because to them there's a big fear there. So I don't have a fear. I got a big fear of other places. Trust me. But this one's not so big with me. I don't mind being exposed and being made vulnerable. I don't want people to see all of my terrible sins. That's true. That's true. But opening up a little bit, it's not such a terrible thing. Okay. That was emunah. Right. And bitachon says, I'm going to keep on showing up. I'm going to trust in Hashem. I'm going to continue to speak. I'm going to continue to be seen. Whether exposed or exalted, it makes no difference. Who cares? Like somebody published, this phony hit piece on me a while back. And I was like, him trying to, it's even called, exposing the Shoemaker, as if I need to be exposed, So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're exposed or whether you're exalted. They're just both phony. They're both phony. That's why I love Rudyard Kipling's poem, If. When I was a boy, my dad taught me that poem. And I still hold that poem very dear to me to this day. It's a tremendously beautiful poem. If you don't know it, look it up. The poem, If, by Rudyard Kipling. Because he basically says that this is what he's talking about here. That there are imposters in life, winning and losing, success, failure, right? Triumph, disaster. They're all just illusions. And he's right. He's right. So we need to have that anchored in our life. And then the bitul aspect, the self-nullification, is I release my obsession with image. That's tough. Because even me, before I get on camera here, I make sure my beard tries to look as neat as I can make it, and look decently okay, make my eyebrows look good. I'm not perfect, I've seen some pretty big rabbis that completely disregard their appearance totally. They're made perfect in this. So I'm not perfect in any of these things. I don't pretend to be. So release the obsession with image, whether hiding in shame or shining in praise. They're both just imaginations. They're just neither real. Whether you're exposed or whether you're exalted, whether you are shamed or whether you're praised. Rabbi Nachman talks a lot about this. It's not like this is also in the way of Breslov, very much so. It doesn't really matter. All this stuff doesn't matter. Somebody compliments you, somebody insults you, right? What's the difference? To reach the level where it doesn't matter, where you don't care, again, that's bitachon. Remember, bitachon is not caring about the outcome. We need to learn to cultivate the attribute of I don't care. Like, I don't care. It's not that you don't care about the things that you need to care about. You do care about truth, right? You do care about beauty. You do care about love. You do care about being strict with yourself. Yeah, you care about the things that Hashem cares about, but you don't care about the outcome. That you just don't care. I don't care. You compliment me, whatever. You insult me, whatever. Very high level. I'm not saying these things are easy. I'm saying that's what we have to shoot for. The main pasuk here is in Psalms chapter 34 verse 6. We say this on Shabbos morning. They looked to him, the people looked to Hashem, and they were radiant, and their faces were never shamed. They were never disgraced. What do you mean they were never disgraced? They were never ashamed. They didn't allow themselves to become disgraced. Somebody can do they can try to disgrace you all they want, but if you don't let it stick, well, then you're not disgraced, are you? So really, being disgraced or being humiliated or being shamed is only if we allow it to stick. It's really in our control. And then the breathing exercise, if you're able to do this and spend some time working on this on your own, you can do this during Heat Bodhidut too, by the way. You don't have to wait till some great crisis strikes you in life. You can do it during Heat Bodhidut and work on it, right? The truth is my beauty. And you breathe, and you take the time, and you breathe in, you breathe out. And truth is Hashem's light. So the true beauty is Hashem's light. Not me, or the way I look, or the way I appear, the way I seem in other people's eyes. That's not beauty. Truth itself is beauty. Hashem Himself is beauty. Focus on Hashem's truth. Focus on Hashem's light. And now everything else will just dissolve. It will dissolve. That's what bitul really means. Bitul really means dissolving yourself in Hashem's light. So to wrap up, I want to just give us a quick example of each of these now in summary, just like a conclusion, but hopefully it'll last with us. Let's go back and go through quickly Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet and look at a simple example of each one. A fear of rejection might go like this. In a normal situation, you want to help your neighbor. You want to go offer your neighbor some help. But you kind of are afraid that maybe they're just going to brush you off. Or they're going to think maybe that you're meddling in their personal affairs, so you're not sure whether to help them or not. Or maybe you want to give tzedakah to somebody that you know they might need, they're in need, but you're concerned and afraid that maybe that person is so sensitive about their financial condition that they don't want anybody to know about it. And if you were to give tzedakah to them, you would embarrass them and they would feel humiliated. So what do? So you need to learn the laws of tzedakah for one thing, but that's not the point here. The point is that would be an example of fear of rejection. Not just from parents, just things happen in life. You want to help somebody, you want to extend chesed, but you're afraid of the repercussions that might happen. That's a fear of rejection. What about a fear of over-acceptance, of this fear of being swallowed alive in love? Let's say you have a friend, and he calls you every day all the time, and he wants to help you out with everything. Or maybe he helps you out once in life, Thank you very much. And now, every day, he comes over and knocks, can I help you with anything? Can I help you? He's like, just leave me alone, will you? Right? So that's also that the person's kindness becomes potentially kind of stifling and you can't breathe and you're afraid of getting involved in that kind of a relationship. So that's a fear of over-acceptance. They both are rooted in chesed. All right, an example now, the two examples I brought to the table for us to think about when we end is Gevurah. So obviously failure, that's a pretty obvious one. But let's look at it in the real world. You're an employer, you work for somebody. And the boss says to you, he wants you to take initiatives. But every time you've seen people take initiatives, if it didn't work out exactly the way, the outcome didn't turn out exactly the way the boss wanted, he got angry with them. So now what? Now, the boss says he wants you to take initiative, but now you hesitate to take the initiative. Why? Because you are afraid that if I mistake, you're going to get ripped apart. That's a fear in Gevurah. And the other side, the fear of success, would be like, say you're a student and you always get good grades, top grades. But you are afraid, you dread being able to keep that going. You fear that I can't continue to live my life with these impossible standards all the time weighing over me. I don't want to succeed all the time. It's driving me crazy. The pressure is too much. That's an example, again, rooted in Gevurah. Now, in conclusion, let's look at 2 quickies from Tiferet. Again, Tiferet is all about image, harmony, expectations. So, on the shame side, an example might be like this. Say that a respected teacher, somebody could be a rabbi, but he's got some skeletons, in the closet. Pretty serious ones. So, he's a very respected, say, teacher or rabbi, public figure, but he says to himself that he's always living under this fear that if people would see my flaws, my image would crumble. My statue that people worship would come down like Nebuchadnezzar's statue. That's a fear in Tiferet. And the last one as an example would be fear of exaltation. This isn't the same as the fear of living up to the always getting 100 on a test, because that's a fear of a standard. This one is like a fear of always being praised, right? Say you're a young child and you play the violin and you're really good, and everybody around you keeps saying, oh, you're such a prodigy. What a child prodigy. He's going to be like Mozart. He's going to be like, Yehudi Menuhin. He's going to be like Yitzhak Stern. He's going to be one of the great violinists in all history. And you hear this all the time. And you think to yourself, I'm never going to live up to what people say about me. That's a fear in Tiferet. Because it's a fear of being exalted, of being put up on the pedestal and not thinking that that there's no way you're going to be able to stay up there all the time. And all these things, all these fears, they can all stifle us. They can all limit our growth. That's what they really do. Fears, as we said before at the beginning of last class, fears paralyze. And we don't want to be paralyzed. We want to be free. We want to be released. We want to be able to fulfill our potential to the utmost. B'ezrat Hashem, we'll continue this discussion next week. We'll finish it up. We'll talk about the fears rooted in the bottom 4 sefirot of Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. And the granddaddy of all fears themselves, we'll see it in the Torah relating to Adam Arishon in the Gan. And what is the ultimate fear? It's the fear of this separation from Hashem. So B'ezrat Hashem will conclude this whole set next week. Until then, have yourselves a great week.